All right, here we go, everybody. So we are on chapter 7, game number 7. This was Magnus. He played this game against Emmanuel Berg, and you are about to see an incredible Magnus endgame grind, something that he is pretty famous for. And he played this game when he was around 16 years old. So here we go. So we see this opening, and Black is not content to just let White have the space. He's going to strike at the center aggressively early on. White takes, Black takes. White breaks up the pin that this bishop was doing. And now White plays knight takes d5, and find me Black's only move here. He's only got one move that he can play in this position.
Type it in the chat. Type it in the chat. More people in the chat. Yeah, there
Yeah,
you
there you go. Very
go.
good,
There you
Ellie. Good
go.
Vihan. Good Oliver. Yep, bishop takes d2 because we're threatening to take this bishop. So, like, if you just take this knight, we're going to take the bishop and end up a piece. So instead, you take this with check, and then once the queen takes, you can take the knight. So that's the only thing Black could do in that position. White takes with the queen, developing a piece. Black does the same. White takes this way. Black takes. The queens have left the board, and now we already have an endgame only 11 moves into the game. Half the minor pieces are gone, and so are the queens. And so now we have an interesting situation where it's going to be all about positioning yourself for the endgame. And this is a really nice move by Magnus. Bishop to g2, immediately developing, making a threat, and kind of forcing Black to intervene against the bishop, stopping it from taking on b7. But when he intervenes, which I think is kind of the only thing he could have done, when he intervenes, he's going to end up giving himself a weakness. Because watch what happens here. Magnus is going to trade off all these pieces. And what advantage does White have in this endgame position now? Tell me in the chat, what do you think White's advantage is in this position? Definitely looks pretty equal material, but but not everything about this position is completely symmetrical. There's no passed pawn here yet, and I wouldn't say there's any like potential for White to make a passed pawn at the moment. If they
You
had
got
like a 3-on-2 majority or something, then maybe.
you guys want to make sure you are here on Thursday night as we talk more about king and rook on end games here like this. These kind of
Yeah,
situations, this kind of end games like this. This is why we're going to talk about it on Thursday. It comes up so often. And so you want to have make sure you understand your battle plans when you are in situations like this. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can confirm that. I get so many rook in games like this. Coach Joseph is right. Three pawn islands. This isolated pawn on the c file and the isolated pawn on the a file too. These are weaknesses that black has. These pawns can never defend each other, which means that if white starts attacking them, black's going to need to use a piece to defend them. The pawns can't just defend each other like white's a and b pawns can do. So that is a pawn structure weakness that black has that white does not have to deal with. So that's the advantage that Magnus got in this position. And again, that started with this simple activating move, this threat of bishop to g2. Black was kind of low on options. He doesn't really have a good way of defending it. So I guess he could go back, but that's kind of ugly. So he had to intervene, and all the trades led to this weakness. So Magnus has seized a small advantage, and watch from here how he converts that. He castles queenside, and castling queenside is often very nice in endgames because in addition to activating a rook to the center, it also keeps the king closer to the center, which helps it to stay active. So that's pretty nice. Black activates his king, very logical. And there is one open file in this position, so Magnus wants it all to himself because he's greedy like that. Doubling up the rooks is a threat here. He's going to try to do that. Black wants to seize the file, of course, and Magnus is going to double the rooks. And what do you think Black played here? There was a really cool move, a great move that Black played here. Give some time for everyone to think about it. Very good, Oliver. Very good. Fihan, yes, well done. Rook to d5, that is the move. This is very well played by black because the reason this is so good is that now if white takes, black gets to fix his pawn structure with c takes d5, and now he no longer has this isolated pawn. So that's pretty cool. So Magnus plays the move e4, provoking black to trade the rooks. Pawn goes here. And now this move here, rook to a4, and with this move, white's rook is active and flexible, while black's rook is tied down. And that's 5 points of material that can't move without dropping a pawn, and that's a big deal in the endgame. White is tying down an entire rook. Both sides are activating their kings, very logical and expected, and black should be careful to not make more weaknesses in his position as he pushes these pawns. And we see some more moves. White is advancing. He defends the rook with his pawn. And I have a question for you guys. Would you take on c6 here if you're white?
You guys would.
Some people might. I hope not. I definitely hope you wouldn't take with the pawn for one thing, because if
Yeah,
you
I
do
was gonna
that,
say I would be prone to taking with the pawn.
I was prone to taking with the pawn too when I was making this when I was putting this game in the study. So yeah, it's understandable. Like, oh yeah, let's make a passed pawn, but no, that would not be good because you would drop the rook. But even if you take with the rook, the funny thing is, yeah, if you take with the rook and everything trades, we kind of lose the advantage of the active pieces, and black is okay here. And a big thing to notice is that he has more extra pawn moves to exhaust and force the white king to give way. He's got this h pawn that he can just play around with once the a pawns have exhausted all their moves. So that could help black to seize the opposition and force the white king back sometime down the line. And this would be a draw with best play. It takes away some of Magnus's ability to grind it out. And we're going to keep taking a look at this because this is interesting. Tell me in the chat, is a4 winning, drawing, or losing for white? And what should black play here? That's correct. Well done. Well done, David. Losing a5. Yes, a5 is the only move according to the engine. He has to play that, and now White's king has to give way. He's literally has to go back. He obviously can't push either of these because it would give Black a pass pawn. He's got to go back, and it seems like there are some things that White can do. Like he could play king to d3, which stops Black from taking immediate opposition because he can't play king to d5. So Black plays this move. White does take opposition, but here's the thing. Black, this is where those extra pawn moves are very significant. It's really nice to have them because now White has to give way. If he goes here, the Black king comes this way. If he goes here, the king goes that way. So that's really cool. And yeah, it's super helpful in king and pawn endgames to have more free pawn moves than your opponent. Because like if Black didn't have these pawn moves, pretend like this h pawn is on like h5 already and it's his move, he'd be forced to retreat his king in this position, and White could come up and he would not be winning. So, at least I don't think he'd be. Keeping as many pawn moves in your back pocket as you can and limiting your opponent, like what we saw with Black pushing his pawn to g4, which stops both of these pawns from moving, that is a valuable thing to have in your pocket in the endgame. So going back to the game, Magnus knew not to take. He played king to c5, continuing to press his advantage. And this happened. White is so much more active than Black in this position. And the engine says it's a draw, but that's the engine. You have to always take that with a pinch of salt in positions that are, easier for one side to play than the other. Because from a human perspective, humans are going to make mistakes, and Black is under pressure here. And guess the top engine move for Black, by the way. Actually, I think I just showed you. Never mind. My bad. The top engine move, I'll just say it since I showed it accidentally. It is rook to c2, and this is the best move to keep equality, even though it looks like white just takes. Active rooks are extremely important in rook endgames. Black is going to get some pawns of his own if this line happens like this, and material is equal. Black has an active rook. This would be equal. But instead of that best move, black played instead rook to c5. And this is a blunder, and white is now winning. So black might have felt the pressure building. Magnus takes, of course, and now the fun is just starting, believe it or not. This is still very interesting from here on out. Tell me, what is white's winning plan? Who knows what white should be doing here?
Going for the pawn.
Right, yeah. Exactly. The plan for white is going to be to go after these pawns, because if black goes after the a pawn, white can get these pawns easily and have a pass pawn on his fourth rank in 3 moves. Black, on the other hand, would take 4 moves to have a pass pawn on his second rank. So white is going to win that race. White's going to be faster. So this is a good winning plan for white. So white goes here, and then black plays this move. He's not going for the a pawn. Did anyone see that coming? He's going to go for the e pawn instead. So white takes, black takes, and who knows white's only move in this position? What do you think it is?
Coach Santos knows.
Remember, if you play king to f5, it's a very zugzwangy position, and black has more extra pawn moves to give away than white does. Very good. Yeah, good job, David. Good job, Given. King to g5 is the only move. Here's the engine if you don't believe me. Going for this pawn instead. And the reason this is okay is because black's e-pawn is not going to be a passed pawn, and white's going to be a pawn up in this case. And I'll show you here. There's a lot of interesting lines here. Going for zugzwang is the wrong idea, again, because black has so many pawn moves that he can do. So if this happens, white eventually has to give way, and this happens, black gets to play this. And what should you play here as white? What would you play in a real game, and what should you play? That might be
White
two different
takes
questions.
and then push the pawn.
That is a very natural thing to do, taking this pawn. But it's not the right idea, I don't think. There is another move that you actually have to play. King to f5. Yes, Vihan, well done. Because if you play this, black is going to push the e-pawn. And even if you try to get over, he's going to push and have the support of the king. And his e-pawn is closer to queening than either of your pawns are. So black's going to queen first. So you can't take this pawn because black is guaranteed to queen, and he's going to queen before you do. So instead, you have to play king to f5. And this is why you can't just, take things immediately in the endgame. It's all about stopping the opponent from queening, and all about who's going to queen first. And now, which pawn should white take? There's only one right answer. Okay, so the correct answer is the only pawn white can take here is actually the g pawn. Good job to Coach Joseph and Oliver. It looked very much like we were going to have to take the e pawn, but now you have to kind of change your strategy again. Like, endgames are so tricky. You can never have the mindset of just blindly grabbing material as much as you can in an endgame, because it's not like the rest of the game where it's just, thinking about material mostly. In most of the game, material is like the basic default guide to who's winning and how to play. Of course, there are other important advantages too, but material is like the one people look at most commonly. In pawn endgames, though, that default guide is not material, but it's proximity to queening. So that is an important thing to keep in mind. So king takes, and then I'll show you the end of this line. White holds the draw by playing this way. Eventually, king goes here, you go here. White is going to get the pawn. Black is going to trap the white king in front of his own pawn for the draw. And yeah, this is going to be a drawn position. If instead white had taken like this, black would be winning because if king goes here, black plays this move, and this is zugzwang. White has to abandon his own pawn. Black gets to take, and black is now queening. So endgames are just crazy, crazy hard and very interesting. Some very fun lines there. So anyway, back to the game. King to g5, going for this pawn. Black plays this move. Magnus plays this. He plays f4, forcing a trade of these pawns. Except now he pushes. He's got a pass pawn of his own. He's also up a pawn. And black is going to play here. He's going to stay flexible, threatening to push his own passer and also catch white's f-pawn. But if white can trade these two pass pawns for each other, he's still going to be a pawn up. He's still going to have this extra g-pawn right here. And that is going to be a decisive advantage because being a pawn up with pawns on both sides of the board in the endgame is pretty much always a decisive winning advantage. So white goes back. We see some shuffling, and white continues to just defend, advance his pawns. Black can't do anything. He can't really push ahead in any way. His stuff is all blockaded. Meanwhile, white is making progress, just continuing to push. Here come white's pawns. Here goes Magnus. And Magnus goes on to win the game from here with his two pawns. Yeah, there you go. So Magnus took an equal position with all the way back with the rook endgame, and then turned it into a win with active pieces and pressuring the opponent, inducing the blunder, and then never looked back. So hopefully you got some great endgame tips from that, like trying to trade in a way that fixes your pawn structure, like we saw with that rook move, doubling rooks on an open file when you can, and also not just grabbing material indiscriminately, but thinking about the proximity to queening in the endgame. So does anyone have any questions about that?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Cool.
Go to the we've been talking about in games in my class.
Yeah.
If you haven't been showing up, we need to evaluate again very quickly so you can be able to talk about the in game. In games are complicated in a certain respect, but it shouldn't be as complicated because y'all know some basic stuff. All right, because now when we get to the king and rook in games, that's what we're going to be, mostly discussing. Um, getting to this point now, show us very quickly, Coach Daniel, when the rooks leave the board. Boom, 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 boom. These guys are good. Okay, we'll be talking about first king and one rook in games, Coach Daniel, and then we will take a look at when there's two rookie cookies on the board here. So yeah, very interesting. Take it now here because boom, we've been spending several weeks now on pawn structures like this. What do you guys remember, Coach Joseph, Coach Daniel, how to continue to approach this? Because even again, this board screams winning by white.
Yeah. Yeah, here I think you have to look at the superior position of the white king, and the plan is going to be to just use that position to attack black's pawns before he can attack your pawns.
Mm-hmm. So now it's going forward, and as my coach puts it, in an accurate way, you got to win this. So let's show them real quickly, Coach Daniel. Okay, boom, like this. This plan should be in your head as you take takes. Now, going back to Coach Daniel's problem, go back again, few more steps, one more, taking which the pawn on or going for the pawn. Okay, because again, a lot of people would play Coach Daniel right away. They would play that right away. So
Yeah.
you do want to take your time. You do want to take your time. But you would also need to, as you have time on your clock, evaluate it, so that you don't get into drawish, you know, positions here because that's what makes it tricky, going too fast. Okay, going too fast. So as
Yeah,
we calculate it, it's it's pretty winnable. Even at this point where I'm connecting my pawns and gonna create a passer, right?
yeah,
We have been discussing um I need to create pass pawns, which is what he did. Attacking the weak pawns. So if you go back to that, when those kings were starting to march over again, there, there you go. Boom. Um, I gotta create a pass pawn. There's no way around this. Okay. But first, let's attack some weaknesses. Once I got these pawns gone, okay, then and as I'm stepping one step, two steps, three steps, four steps into the game, okay, boom. Now the pawns are being eliminated, but also again we're trying to create pass pawns. Is it going to be easier? I think if you go back to king to d4, back one for me, coach. Okay, it's going to be easier to create a pass pawn by trying to protect my pawn or really going after the g4 pawn, because you're right, we're still paying attention to pawn islands, so many weaknesses, so many weaknesses. Just the approach is slow and slow.
yeah.
Questions, Coach Daniel.
No, no questions.
Okay, so we're trying to unmask the uh the end game, so that boom, look at that, beautiful. It's just
Yeah,
watching a master grind it to a fine art like this. It wasn't.
definitely.
Remember, we talked a distant pass pawn. We talked about distant pass pawns, Coach. Remember that?
Yeah,
There you go. There you go. Not taking towards it, because if he took it towards it instead of the with the H pawn, right? Then that's not gonna look at that. Look at that. Now what? Now what does black do? You got something to do. But yep,
yeah. I mean,
he
there's
can go
not
after
much
that.
black can do. There,
Nope.
yeah. And this is the nice thing about end games too, is that sometimes when you've got like a winning end game position, I feel like there often comes a point where the opponent just has nothing to do. There were
Mhm.
like 10 moves here where white is just like slowly advancing, and black's got like nothing to do, nothing he can do at all. He's just got to wait for you to like make progress, basically. So
Mhm.
that's another cool thing to notice.
Mhm. What did you like most about this game, Coach Daniel?
I guess how
Personally,
Magnus,
personally,
yeah,
personally.
I think how Magnus took like a very equal position from here, like basically just everything trades off, and then how he takes like one small advantage, and then he turns that into a win. Like that's cool.
I like that rook move too. Rook to d5. A lot of people will be missing that.
Yeah,
Planting
Rook
the rook.
D5 is really excellent. I like that.
Very genius. Like to um, keep the pawn structure together. But I think that after e4 and the rook takes and all that stuff, and then e5, move number 20, where I'm at. Okay, boom, right here. A lot of people would not find that move. They
Yeah,
would play,
maybe a
yeah,
lot of people play this.
they want to play that. They want to play that. But again, when I'm looking at Magnus Carlsen games, is like, okay, well, what's the deal with king to a4? I mean, rook to a4. What's the deal? And the deal is going to eyeball the a7 pawn. My king, excuse me. Blech. My king will just go forward and
Yeah,
help that and go attack c6. Very easy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's valuable to tie down a piece and not let it move. So that's a
mhm.
good idea.
Tying it down. There you go. We'll be talking more about rook pawn end games on Thursday. Make sure you're there. That's my plug.